Welcome back to Marvel's Breakdown, the series where I go over the Easter eggs and references to original Marvel comics in Kurt Busiek and Alex Ross's 1994 series Marvels. Today, I will be going over Marvel's number 3, which came out in March 1994. Of course, while there are plenty of non-comics references in these books, such as cameos of former US President Richard Nixon or Marvel Comics icons Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, here I will only be reviewing the comics-specific references. I would also like to preface this with saying that you do not need to know all of these intricate continuity details in order to appreciate Marvels as a series. I'm only doing this because I find these references to original Marvel comics fascinating. I highly encourage you to read Marvels with or without this knowledge. And with that, let's get started. As is the case with all the issues in this series, the events of Marvel's number 3 are set in roughly the same time period as the original Marvel comics they reference. In this case, Marvel's number 3 covers the events of the Marvel Universe from Avengers number 22, which was published in October 1965, to the Uncanny X-Men number 23, which was published in August 1966. However, since comic publication dates are usually around 2 months ahead of their release, these books probably came out between August 1965 and June 1966. So, the events of Marvel's number 3 covers a little under a year of Silver Age Marvel comics. Starting with the issue's cover reveals Galactus' herald the Silver Surfer flying through a field of floating rocks down to the Earth's surface, an event which occurs in Fantastic Four number 48. Reflected on his mirror-like surface is an approaching Human Torch, a moment which does occur in the original comic and which will be seen again later on in this issue from a different perspective. Page 1 opens on Phil Sheldon's desk, littered with numerous photos and newspaper clippings about Tony Stark and his alter ego Iron Man. Starting at the top of the page is a photo of the press conference introducing the new Avengers lineup from Avengers number 16, which was also depicted last issue in Marvel's number 2. Just beside it is a cancelled Wanted poster for Hawkeye, a reference to how he was originally mistaken for and became a criminal before joining the Avengers. The surveillance camera photos don't seem to be from any original comic source, though could be from one of the times he broke into Stark Industries factories under the influence of Black Widow. Speaking of Black Widow, a photo of her is just below the poster, alongside her henchman Boris from Tales of Suspense number 52, in which they arrived in America to eliminate both Tony Stark and Anton Vanko, the original Crimson Dynamo. The Crimson Dynamo appears in another picture just below, based off a John Romita Sr. drawing from Amazing Spider-Man number 86. Though in universe, it was probably a Vanko during his time working for Stark Industries, rather than the times when the armor was used to sabotage Stark Industries by Vanko and later Boris, since those were much more secluded incidents. The Business Week magazine depicts the original Avengers lineup from Avengers number 1, which would soon change with Ant-Man becoming Giant Man and Hulk quitting in the next issue. Iron Man's absence on the cover is due to Tony himself secretly being Iron Man. Next to the magazine is a photo of the original gray Iron Man armor, which was likely taken during Iron Man's first wave of crime fighting in the States in Tales of Suspense number 40, following his origin overseas in Tales of Suspense number 39. Farther down the page is another Iron Man armor, the Steve Ditko redesign which lasted from Tales of Suspense number 48 to Tales of Suspense number 53. The image doesn't appear to be from any particular issue, though is similar to his pose on the cover of Tales of Suspense number 52. Below this photo, as well as in the bottom right corner, are images of Titanium Man, who fought Iron Man as a surrogate of the Soviet Union in Tales of Suspense number 69 to 71. The color photo is likely from some point before the fight, while the black and white photo is from the broadcast of the fight itself, at a point where Titanium Man was being blasted by negative particles of ionic energy by Iron Man. The newspaper clip about Stark and the Countess is referencing Stark meeting his former flame, the Countess de la Sperosa, as a result of the Titanium Man fight. Her outfit here is from Tales of Suspense number 69, in which she and Stark presumably got drinks between panels, sparking this gossip column. The Daily Bugle masthead used here and throughout the rest of Marvels from this point on is from the Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 15, in which front pages of the paper appear frequently. The weapons test story written by Ben Urich is from the test of a transistorized one-man sub in Tales of Suspense number 66, which was actually botched due to a fight with the Atlantean supervillain Atuma, rather than any fault of Iron Man, though this fact was kept secret. Senator Harrington Byrd was a U.S. senator who frequently antagonized Tony Stark throughout the Silver Age and was present at the weapons test. The photo of Iron Man is from the later fight with Titanium Man, raising a few questions about the amount of time between the events of this story and its later publication in the Bugle. The notepaper contains some guesses as to the name of the secret organization S.H.I.E.L.D., which was starting to become more public due to Fury's escapades after being made S.H.I.E.L.D.'s director in Strange Tales number 135. The mention of his army records is a reference to his days fighting in World War II as a Howling Commando. The dialogue on this page makes reference to the wedding of Sue Storm and Reed Richards from Fantastic Four Annual number 3, as well as the previous issue of Marvels. The text also mentions Stark Industries, which first appeared as a company in Tales of Suspense number 40, while the Long Island plant is likely the Stark Enterprises' main plant, located on the Long Island Sound. Finally, moving on to page 2, behind Phil can be seen the Baxter Building, the headquarters of the Fantastic Four, which first appeared in Fantastic Four number 3. Ben Urich makes a much larger appearance in this issue, following his cameo in Marvel's number 2, with a look inspired by David Mazzucchelli's take on the character in the 1980s. The photo of a smiling Daredevil on his desk is a cheeky reference to his later connection with the hero. As for when this photo could have reasonably been taken, my best guess is either from Daredevil talking to troops fighting Namor the Submariner in Daredevil number 7, or from his defeating the organization at the Reform Party campaign headquarters in front of numerous staffers and photographers in Daredevil number 11. Urich mentioning that Iron Man is Tony Stark's bodyguard is a cover story dating to Tales of Suspense number 54, and would last until 2002. Stark backing the Avengers is never explicitly referenced in early Marvel comics, but can easily be inferred due to the fact that they meet at his mansion beginning in Avengers number 2. Stark's involvement in secret government affairs is due to his position as the head of the Special Weaponry section of S.H.I.E.L.D. The Avengers being declared a public menace and ordered to disband by the mayor on page 3 is from Avengers number 21, following the team being manipulated by the Enchantress and Power Man into appearing berserk and destroying property. The Bugle secretary here, though unmentioned by the creators, seems to be Betty Brant's future temporary replacement as J. Jonah Jameson's secretary from Amazing Spider-Man number 34. Her reference to two Dorises is a joke about the fact that Ben Urich and Phil Sheldon's wives are both named Doris. The Avengers Day celebration on page 4 was declared by the mayor of New York at the end of Avengers number 22, after the Avengers were able to clear their names, but the celebration remained unseen in the original comics. The mayor from those issues is speaking at the podium here with the rest of the Avengers behind him. Captain America, however, only appears as a cardboard cutout due to him briefly quitting the team at the end of Avengers number 22. Going further down the page, Harrington Bird's campaign to discover Iron Man's true identity began in Tales of Suspense number 72, as a result of national interest in the subject growing following the Titanium Man fight. Tony Stark briefly going missing is most likely from his fleeing the Mad Thinker's awesome android in that same issue, though Tony was frequently missing due to his Iron Man exploits in the issues following the Titanium Man fight. Bird issuing a subpoena following Stark seemingly ignoring him is from Tales of Suspense number 74. The recording of S.H.I.E.L.D. fighting egg-shaped menaces on page 5 is from Strange Tales number 145. This recording seems to be a recreation of the cover of that issue, which combines a number of events from within it. Nick Fury's in the center of the image, duking it out with the villain the Druid, while Dum Dum Dugan and Jasper Sitwell can be spotted fighting off the eggs along with the rest of the surrounding S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, just as they do in the original comic. The experimental weapons designed by Stark and in use here from the original issue are car-mounted cannons, though the blast guns he invented and used in Strange Tales number 135 are likely also in use. The Iron Man Foundation Holly McCann brings up at the bottom of the page is an actual organization advertised in Tales of Suspense number 79, though a more established Stark Industries charity is the Maria Stark Foundation, which would begin to be referenced in the early 1980s, starting with Avengers Annual number 11. Pages 6 and 7 don't have many direct comics references, though they do depict the coastal flooding which occurred as a result of Atuma's attempt to flood the world in order to conquer it in Avengers number 27, as well as a fanatic declaring the end of the world, one of a group mentioned in that issue. The references to that issue continue on to page 8 with a radio broadcast by Hawkeye, which isn't from the original issue, though likely occurs following his rescue of Quicksilver given his mention of a we. The panel of the Avengers in Atuma isn't an actual event from the comics, but rather a recreation of the cover of Avengers number 27, featuring the Avengers, the Atlantean soldiers, and the Squid Monster in roughly the same positions, with the addition of both Atuma himself and a female Atlantean based off of a Rick Larson and Steve Fassner painting from Marvel's Superheroes portfolios. The mention in the text of ships caught in the currents can be briefly seen in the original comic, while Captain America's summary of events presumably happens in the immediate aftermath of Atuma's defeat, which the original comic skips over. Page 9 begins a montage of comic events from the months leading up to the Galactus saga. Spider-Man seeming to attack J. Jonah Jameson is from Amazing Spider-Man number 34, in which it turns out that this is actually Kraven the Hunter impersonating Spider-Man in order to draw out the real web-slinger for a fight. The Fantastic Four's destructive battle is from Fantastic Four number 44 and number 45, in which they fought Dragon Man, the monstrous creature described here, as well as the unmentioned Inhumans Gorgon and Medusa. Most of the actual destruction from the fight was caused by Dragon Man and especially Gorgon, rather than the Fantastic Four. The image on the TV screen shown here is from the very beginning of Fantastic Four number 45, with Mr. Fantastic, the Thing, and the Human Torch saving themselves from the collapsing building, while Dragon Man is flying away with the Invisible Girl in the distance. The montage continues on to page 10 with the Hulk storming Washington, D.C. as per the events of Tales of Astonish number 75, in which he is seeking out the president in order to help the imprisoned Rick Jones. The Times front page in the panel just below is covering the events of Daredevil number 12 through number 14, in which Kazar, the protector of the Savage Land, is captured and brought to Britain by his brother, the Plunderer. The photo of Kazar in the Times seems to be from his trial, in which he was accused of being in the company of a seemingly murderous Daredevil, who was framed by the Plunderer for the murder of one of his own henchmen. The photo of Daredevil in this paper seems to be from him unmasking the Plunderer and clearing his name, making the headline rather misleading. At the bottom of the page in his darkroom, Phil examines pictures of even more recent-ish comic events. Hercules throwing a lamppost at a car is from his foiling of an attempted robbery in Journey into Mystery number 125, while Captain America giving Batroc the Leaper a good punch in the face is from Tales of Suspense number 75. With few references on page 11, let's move on to pages 12 and 13, a giant 2-page spread featuring the sky above New York City ablaze with fire. This is one of the first major events to occur during the Galactus saga from Fantastic Four number 48, and is actually an artificial fire shield created by the Watcher in an attempt to conceal Earth from the Silver Surfer and thus Galactus. The panel of panicked civilians at the bottom of page 12 is directly from the same issue as well, while Phil's efforts to make his way to the Daily Bugle building put him in the company of Bugle reporter Frederick Foswell over the next few pages. On page 14, the fire in the sky is replaced by floating rocks, just as in the original comic, as a result of the Watcher attempting to calm down the widespread panic the fire sparked. Despite the Watcher's efforts, though, the Silver Surfer still weaves his way through the space debris on the following page, breaking through over New York City, just as in the original comic. The torch going to intercept him on page 16 is straight from Fantastic Four number 48, and is another angle of the event from this issue's cover. Phil's mention of the Surfer flashing past the torch is also comic accurate. The final moments of Fantastic Four number 48 play out over the next few pages, with the Silver Surfer signaling Galactus on page 17. Just behind him, the Thing can be seen preparing to punch the Surfer off the roof, just as he does in the original comic. Galactus' ship then descends to Earth, again like in the original comic, followed by the hatch to his ship opening, leading to the full-page splash revealing Galactus on page 18, just like the end of Fantastic Four number 48. The rainbow prism flare used on this page is a sly nod to his original non-purple and somewhat clashing green and red look in the final panel of Fantastic Four number 48, before having his coloring changed in the next issue. The words Galactus speaks on the next page are almost directly from his declaration at the end of Fantastic Four number 48. Continuing down page 20, a cameraman for something called TVWL and other bystanders from Fantastic Four number 49 can be seen watching the fray, while in the next panel, an observer points out the Watcher as some big bald guy, who grows to the size of Galactus and begins trying to reason with him following his arrival at the start of Fantastic Four number 49. The FF running in to attack is an expansion of what originally appeared to be a solo endeavor on the part of the Thing, which ends poorly with the team being gassed by some sort of cosmic device, both in the original comic and on the next page. The Human Torch is able to dodge this only to be zapped by Galactus' eye beams, having his flames smothered in the second panel of the page, a combination of two different panels in the original comic. On page 21, the Torch goes inside after being directed to by the Watcher in the comic, in a panel quite similar to the one further down this page. Also, in that same panel, the top of the Baxter building can be seen, complete with the observatory which appeared on a number of diagrams Marvel published at the time, as well as the remainder of the green gas from Galactus' earlier attack dispersing. This view is seen from within a hospital on the same level as the Baxter Building's roof. A hospital which has actually been seen before since Mr. Fantastic visited it in Fantastic Four number 6 by stretching across from a window in the Baxter Building. Page 22 presents a splash page of Galactus constructing his energy converter on top of the Baxter Building, just as he does in the original comic, with the same components floating in the same places. Near the top of the building, a very tiny thing, Mr. Fantastic and Invisible Girl can be seen observing this take place, again, as they do in the original comic. Panel 2 of page 23 has more bystanders from the original comic appear again, questioning where various Marvel heroes are. The Fantastic Four remain within the Baxter Building because of the Watcher explaining to the team what Galactus consuming the Earth would actually entail. The Avengers, for their part, are in South America during these events as a part of Avengers number 30 and number 31, in which Goliath travels to find a cure for being stuck at 10 feet tall, with the rest of the Avengers following to aid him after he gets mixed up in a situation involving a cult based around the so-called Keeper of the Flame. As for Spider-Man, according to Busiek, it's never been established what exactly the Wall Crawler was doing during the crisis, but based on publication dates and what events are seen when in this comic, he could have potentially been fighting Kraven the Hunter, Molten Man, or the Looter in Amazing Spider-Man numbers 34, 35, or 36. Finally, at the bottom of this page behind Phil is J. Jonah Jameson, ordering around reporters in the Bugle Building. Page 24 depicts the eventful moment where Galactus lines up the igniters on his energy converter to begin consuming the planet, a combination of two panels from the original comic. This attempted consumption fails, however, as the thing destroys a part of the converter on page 25, going on to give Galactus a good smack with the broken antenna, followed by Mr. Fantastic turning into a ball to further push Galactus off the building, all of which are lifted straight from the events of Fantastic Four number 49. The ultimate futility of this action is revealed on the following page in which, just like the original comics, Galactus simply hovers over the streets of New York. Not many references follow this on page 27, though Phil's friend Iggy can actually be seen in the crowd, a placement which makes sense given that he runs a deli in the nearby Baxter Building. The next page depicts the FF's run-in with Galactus' robot, the original Marvel Punisher, who Galactus calls in to occupy the Fantastic Four as he rebuilds his energy converter. The panel of the Punisher pummeling Mr. Fantastic and the Thing is straight from Fantastic Four number 49. Page 29 really has no references apart from Phil mentioning the mutant riots from last issue and the Uncanny X-Men number 14. Page 30, though, moves on to Fantastic Four number 50, in which the Silver Surfer turns on Galactus following an enlightening and unseen here encounter with Alicia Masters. Him attacking Galactus with energy bolts is straight from the opening pages of Fantastic Four number 50, as is this angle of the energy converter and the FF standing protected by the Invisible Girl's force field. Page 31 continues this battle from Phil's perspective, with the Silver Surfer's encasement of Galactus in a cocoon of pure energy being seen through a television set. The viewer's confusion over the Silver Surfer's allegiance makes sense, given that his turn to the side of humanity was almost completely unseen by the public. Page 32 goes back to the site of the action, combining a number of panels from Fantastic Four number 50 to present Galactus breaking free from the Silver Surfer's cocoon. Page 33 has Phil overhearing another report, this time through the radio, about the Silver Surfer surfing the shockwaves of Galactus' giant explosions. The older man's reference to seeing Captain America fight one time is so vague it could be in reference to literally any public Cap appearance from his first public appearances in 1941's Captain America Comics number 1, to his then most recent public appearances in either Avengers number 27 or Tales of Suspense number 79. Page 34 is another combination and condensing of panels from the original comics, depicting Galactus blasting fireballs at the Silver Surfer from his fingertips. There's not really any references on the following page 35, so moving on to the next two pages is a double-page spread, which mainly features Galactus firing beams which form cones of some sort at the Silver Surfer, another direct event from Fantastic Four number 50. The Fantastic Four themselves can be seen as tiny figures on top of the Baxter Building, with the Human Torch reappearing after an absence in which he returned from being sent to Galactus' home ship in order to retrieve the ultimate nullifier by the Watcher. Their pose is somewhat similar to a panel from the original comic, which implies that this is right after the Torch's immediate return. Behind the energy converter is a sneakily hidden Watcher, who was indeed present for most of the events of the Galactus saga on top of and around the Baxter Building. His translucent appearance here seems to imply that he's merely projecting himself from his base on the blue area of the moon, something not established in the original story, but which could very well be the case, as he simply vanishes once it ends. And, speaking of endings, following Phil's reunion with his family on page 38, page 39 covers the end of the Galactus saga. The news report Phil's family watches is actually straight from Fantastic Four number 50, giant red block letters spelling out news and all. The anchor's dialogue in the first panel is a variation of his report from the original comic, while his mention of an NTN News is in reference to the National Television Network, which broadcast the Xavier Trask debate and the Iron Man Titanium Man fight in the previous issue of Marvels, though the original comic's camera notably had a WLW label. The rest of the broadcast is original to Marvels and details the final events of the Galactus saga. Mr. Fantastic threatening Galactus with the Ultimate Nullifier in panels 3 and 4 is straight from the original comic, with the rest of the Fantastic Four added in behind him. The announcers mention that Reed handed over the Nullifier is from him surrendering the device in order to end the battle with Galactus, leaving the Earth unconsumed, an event which isn't depicted here. The broadcast continues onto page 40 with the first panel showing Galactus stripping the Silver Surfer of his space-time powers and ability to leave Earth with his eye-beams, while panel 2 depicts Galactus finally departing via a dimensional displacement ability, thus ending the events of the Galactus saga. The references don't stop there though, as page 41's newspapers are straight from Fantastic Four number 50, covering the fallout of the saga. The Daily Bugle front page, including the J. Jonah Jameson editorial, is from the original comic, with the photo being a street view of Galactus hovering over New York streets, along with a picture of Reed Richards from an unseen press conference regarding Galactus. The Evening News front page is also from Fantastic Four number 50, with the photo here being of the Baxter Building engulfed in energy, most likely from the aftermath of Galactus' dimensional displacement. The third news story about Goliath's return to the Avengers is original to Marvels. Though Goliath had been teaming with the Avengers again since Avengers number 28, the public only probably became widely aware of this fact following the events of Avengers number 30 and number 31. This news coverage continues on page 42, with Phil mentioning reports of a melancholy thing wandering back alleys, a subject which garnered its own headlines in Fantastic Four number 50. The panel of the thing scaring a woman during his morose wanderings is also straight from the original comic. Further down the page, Peter Parker shows up in J. Jonah Jameson's office, bearing photos of Spider-Man's fight with the Looter from Amazing Spider-Man number 36. Peter's look with the striped yellow vest here is a classic outfit from the Ditko era of Spider-Man, with this specific combination of vest and black shirt being from Amazing Spider-Man number 37. Peter had been wearing an unbuttoned vest like this since Amazing Spider-Man number 29, though could possibly have been wearing the same vest buttoned up as early as Amazing Spider-Man number 4. Basically, Peter loves yellow vests. J. Jonah Jameson's office here seems to be an amalgamation of a number of its Ditko-era appearances and designs, especially the panel at the top of page 43. Also on page 43 is Ben Urich, again with his Daredevil photo, informing Phil of Senator Byrd's cancellation of Stark Industries' defense contracts, an event which occurred in Tales of Suspense number 77, along with the mentioned plant closings. Page 44 has Frederick Foswell bursting in on Phil's family dining out in order to inform Phil of Count Nefarious' imprisonment of Washington, D.C., an event from the Uncanny X-Men number 23. The fact that Foswell knows it's Nefaria behind it seems to imply that this is actually very near the end of that comic, since for the majority of that issue, Nefaria convinced the public that the X-Men were actually behind the imprisonment. The X-Men being spotted fighting him are more likely the X-Men fighting his army of supervillain henchmen within the encased city, though they did also tussle before the city was taken hostage in New York's Central Park. The crowd complaining about the X-Men and mutants are probably just anti-mutant bigots, though they could possibly still be misinformed about who was actually behind the events in DC. The issue finally ends with Phil pointing out the Baxter Building towering tall above the city. And that's that. Every reference I was able to find to original Marvel Comics in Marvel's number 3. Thanks for watching, and let me know if you spotted any references I missed.